So you suggest that knowledge is power, which
I'm
sure we'd all agree with.
Yeah.
I wonder if you'd share with us 3 of perhaps your most powerful sources of knowledge, and what you consider them to be.
Books, life, and other people, which is sort of related, you know, life experiences. I think it's good being book smart, but if you don't have life experiences to teach you as well, it's kind of useless, because you have to practically apply that knowledge. You can be, you know, the greatest mathematician in the world, you've still got to apply that to something, or the greatest critical thinker in the world. If you're not applying it to something, then it's kind of useless. So I'd say life situations are your biggest teacher first, but then it's what you do with all the other knowledge you get from all the other sources in those life situations. So I'd say people, books, and life.
Knowledge is power. AKALA'Music.com, Illustrate Records. Listen.
A lot of people get encouraged. This idea that, I don't know, being a geek is uncool. Who sold us this idea? By geek, I mean someone that takes pride in being educated. Whoever sold you that idea is trying to oppress you. It's very simple. Educated people run the world. Anyone trying to sell you the idea that being uneducated is cool is taking you for an idiot. Literally. And we buy into it. You know, like, geeks run the world. Technicians, engineers, politicians, lawyers. You know? Be a geek. It's good to be a geek. It's good to be. Big up all the geeks. Wu-Tang were geeks. I don't care what no one wants to tell me. I listen to Wu-Tang were geeks. I don't give a shit they were from Staten Island projects and they wore hoodies. Wu-Tang were geeks.
Whatever background you're from, but these are just people who we can look at as examples, we can look at as a source for inspiration within ourselves, as a source for power, as when we think we've had a difficult start in life, or when we think that we can't go anywhere, a source of kind of looking forward and a source of inspiration. Sometimes people have had even more difficult starts in life than ourselves, end up achieving kind of some really, really incredible things.
The 4 youngest people to pass GCSEs ever is young Nigerian kids from Peckham. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, now if the 4 youngest kids that ever stabbed someone was from Peckham, it'll be on the news every 5 minutes and you know about, rah, a 6-year-old got stabbed. But 6-year-olds from Peckham passed their GCSEs, 4 of them. You understand? 2 6-year-olds and 2 5-year-olds, it's not in the news. The 2 youngest people to ever go Cambridge, same thing, it's the older sisters of the same family. You know what I mean? They're from the same hood, they've grown up in the same stuff, etc, 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 but they're not being promoted as the thing that young people growing up somewhere like Hackney could aspire. Because you might look at them and say, well, hold on a minute, if they're from the same kind of ends as me, and they're the youngest people to ever go Cambridge, why can't I do it?
A lot of the time, a lot of negative stereotypes can be repeated and can be the only thing we have access to or knowledge of, and can impact the way that we carry ourselves and the way that we act in life without us even knowing. And there's numerous other examples of people like that, of positive aspects of everyone's history, of positive aspects of everybody's contribution to where we're at as human beings today. And the more we can study these examples, the more we can relate to some of these examples, just in our opinion and in the actions we see of some people, the more we can achieve.
The stereotypes become fashionable, and we get fed a lot of stereotypes a lot of the time. You know, if you look like this, you've got to play this role. If you're a woman, you've got to do that. If you're a man, you've got to do that. If you're a black man, you've definitely got to do that, you know. And we get all these boxes that we're encouraged to stay in, and they serve a purpose. It's not like they just exist for entertainment. There's a purpose for a stereotype. A stereotype justifies treating a whole group of people badly because of one stereotype. You take the worst individual within a group. So you take a woman, take the worst behaviors in women, and you say, right, look how bad these women are behaving. That justifies treating all these women really bad because that reflects all women. Or you take, you know, a black man, and you say, look at that image of a black man. He's really bad. He reflects all black men. So therefore we can treat all black people really bad. And you encourage that stereotype to keep yourself from having to confront your own behavior towards a particular group of people. So like our war in Iraq, for example, we couldn't have done that without stereotypes of Muslims or Arabic people. We couldn't have gone there without feeding the public the stereotypes. Terrorists, terrorists, terrorists. Oh God, the Muslim with a backpack and a beard's going to get you. You must be scared. You must be scared. Terrorist. Without that, you can't invade someone's country.
Fighting each other is defined to us as, yeah, that's cool. If you fight other young people just like you know, if you go to the pub and smash someone's face in, or if you rep your ends, that's really cool. You know, but fighting a system that puts you in that position is defined as, you know, Niki. You know, learning, you know, and educating yourself and doing things that are actually going to help you improve your environment are defined as uncool. And I would say let's redefine that. Let's define cool as being not the stereotype.
It was a bit about redressing the balance and revisiting what's going on in the UK and the very real struggles that exist here. They're not any less important just because there's other places in the world that are worse. What we do have here though is opportunities Not necessarily to get out of them, because a lot of that's like a golden carrot dangled in front of your nose. You know, if you just work hard enough and obey all the rules, you're going to make it. Well, not always. There's a lot of people with degrees out of jobs, particularly people with degrees from particular backgrounds, that are far less likely to be employed than people from other backgrounds. So it's not as simple to say if you work hard, you get somewhere. What we do have is access to some tools to make our existence better. And I feel like as an artist, my job is to try and encourage and create a coolness around accessing those things, around being intelligent. I'm not saying to no one be a pussy, like, to be frank, to use the language. I'm not saying to no one be a punk and let no one mug you off. That ain't got nothing to do with your intelligence. Do you understand? You can be intelligent and be able to defend yourself. You know, you can be intelligent and get girls, you know. I know that. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to sell you a lifestyle like be a nerd. You know what I mean? Like be a neek or whatever it is, idiot names we give it. Because we look at all these people that we think are so successful. We look at these countries like Japan. How did they get there? By being neaky, right? So when we're like, oh, fuck education, what we're essentially saying is, fuck.
A lot of things that you're marketed as being out of your reach, you know, Shakespeare's scene is so difficult and so hard. I think a lot of that's to do with classism. You know, rich kids are not taught that. Working class kids are taught Shakespeare's too difficult. Oh no, you won't understand it. It's fine, it's not for you lot. The irony being, 92% of Shakespeare's audience couldn't even read. So if most of the people who's going to see him as entertainment couldn't even read themselves, how is it that if we can read, he's too difficult? It's just marketing. It's divisive. So for me, it's about giving all people access to something that they've taught to believe is out of their reach. And by getting access to that, they don't see boundaries anymore. When someone tells you, oh, no, you shouldn't play violin because you're from Handsworth, you know, it's not cool to play violin in Handsworth. Why not? Who said it's not? You know, or you shouldn't play the piano, or you shouldn't sing, or you do whatever you want. Don't let no one tell you what you should do.
First, give you the idea to set up the hip-hop Shakespeare company.
I suppose it comes really out of a long tradition of hip-hop in my life, and in general in its very own genesis, as a force for education, as a force for social commentary. But particularly the relationship of hip-hop and Shakespeare came out of really what I felt to be a misconception of both art forms. You know, Shakespeare being viewed as this kind of au fait, elitist, you know, gentleman that we shouldn't touch, you know, when in fact, in reality, he was the people's poet of his day. And the way that really intellectualism, as I was saying before, has become unsexy. And so it's about really taking these two things that seem so disparate, you know, and seem so unrelated, giving us a fresh perception on both to ultimately give us a fresh perception of ourselves and show young people that actually the things that are marketed, I suppose, as most unattainable are the very things that they should be striving to take possession of.
To be so unclever, and Shakespeare's supposed to be the epitome of intelligence. Yet when I take quotes from rap songs and I take quotes from Shakespeare's work, I've done this about 300 times around the world, people always get confused. So it's about taking these two things and showing you that, number one, if someone's telling you Shakespeare's too hard for you, they're mugging you off. Because what they're saying is, this is for really clever people, it's not for you. Even though Shakespeare's audience was 90% couldn't even read or write, we can all read and write, so how is it he's too difficult? And if someone's telling you rappers ain't smart, again, they're mugging off the kids who they're telling that to. Because to me, if you're a rich kid who goes Eton or Cambridge, you got a lot to learn from Nas, as much as I've got to learn from Shakespeare. So to me, it's about fusing them and getting people to open their minds.
I believe all the time that we're living in a culture that's incredibly obsessed with only the high tech and you know, computers and so on. So why do you think people are turning to words in the way that they seem to be?
I think people, we were discussing this backstage actually, I think people are bored. I think people are bored of being told, you know, if you're intelligent, you're not sexy. People are bored of people who have, no offence, but, you know, have no real talent being elevated as, you know, models for us to aspire to. I think people want to be inspired again, and there's nothing more inspirational than great literature throughout human history. That's been a constant, you know, and whether that's delivered verbally or in the form of a text doesn't really matter. So I think people are turning away from the modes of popular culture just because they're bored. The philosophies and the perceptions or conceptions of these two art forms. These two things we think we know so much about. We'll start with Shakespeare. Over the course of the past 3 or 4 years, having worked with hundreds, thousands of young people now, you know, hundreds of workshops, we find out some very interesting things about people's perception of Shakespeare, who they think he was, what the inherited beliefs of the times in which he lived, the people he was surrounded by, his background are. Some of them are, of course, just as with hip-hop, complete nonsense. This idea, for example, that Shakespeare spoke, as people say to us, posh, or the Queen's English, received pronunciation. Well, received pronunciation we know wasn't invented till well after 100 years after Shakespeare died. He'd never heard what we think of today as the Queen's English. When he was alive, people spoke a bit more like a mix between people from Yorkshire and Cornwall. So, for example, the word hours was pronounced ers and ers and ers. Or mood and blood,
rhymed. Mud and blood was the way in which people would have pronounced those words. You know, the times in which he lived, you know, the chasm between rich and poor being larger than it is today, though we seem to be doing our best to, you know, recreate that chasm. But, you know, he was living in very tumultuous, very violent times, and we've really received almost a sanitized vision of that violence, you know, coloring our view of the past. We know over 90% of Shakespeare's audience couldn't read or write. So how is it that in the 21st century, in Britain, that he's come to be viewed as, you know, almost a poster child for elitism? And even within that now, we're getting a debate, did he even write his own plays? Because of course this comes down to who's allowed to be the custodian of knowledge and who isn't. Shakespeare is someone who didn't go to Eton, who wasn't Oxbridge, is seen by some, who need to see him that way, as someone who's not entitled to be the custodian of knowledge. So we have to find an explanation for his intelligence rather than just accept his intelligence as an actual fact.